If you ask most Canadians to tell you one interesting thing about this city, I doubt that they probably could, because London, Ontario, unfortunately, is a town that most people drive through rather than stop in. And that's exactly why we're here today, because I asked you guys on Threads what some of the most interesting things to do in London, Ontario actually is, and compiled a list to make one of the best day trips if you wanted to come and visit the city. So we're gonna be hitting some of these iconic locations, visiting some local producers, and of course, trying some delicious coffee, amongst a whole bunch of other things, rating our experience across 3 different metrics: how underrated our experiences are, the value for those experiences, and how great we actually found our experiences to be, to give you a better idea about what makes this city special. And no one was here. And right now, we're standing on Blackfriars Bridge, one of the most iconic bridges in the city, with a beautiful overlook of the Thames River, because London, Ontario, at one point in time was actually supposed to be the most important city in Canada, with everything named after London, England. It's got a rich history, and I'm excited for this one, so let's jump on into it. And so that means the first stop on our list today is going to be the historic Wortley Village. Primarily because we need coffee, but it's also one of those special neighborhoods in the city that make London so cool. It actually was founded in 1850 and later became part of London in 1898. The city actually tried to develop the area, but local residents put a petition together to make sure that it could keep its Victorian era charm. So a lot of the buildings here are very eclectic and historic. It's also got a ton of local shops and gems and a great little walking district to check out. A lot of the stores right now are closed because we are here on a Sunday morning, but we've got a coffee shop that we want to go to amongst a couple of stops along the way to show you. Okay, so we found ourselves at Black Walnut Cafe to get our coffee this morning. This is actually a local institution. It's been around for about 150 years, but recently reopened after a fire hit it about 3 years ago. And I gotta say, I'm pretty pumped. We got these like sunny side up egg bites to get going. And then of course, black coffee. Let's give this a taste test. How do I cut this? Let's just see what happens. It's almost like a little pot pie. I'm guessing you take the bread and then I think you have to dip it into the yolk here is probably the way. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Okay. That is scone batter. And that is very good. Now, one of the cool parts about Wortley Village is actually the Idlewild Inn and Spa. This was a Victorian mansion that was built in 1878 that was since converted into a hotel in the mid-1970s, but it is worth checking out just from the architecture alone. Another stop that's worthwhile in Wortley Village is Sidetrack Cafe. They're famous for something called a bagel bomb, which is something we gotta try. Breakfast it is. Let's do it. I love it, yeah. We'll go with 2. The smell from these bagel bombs, I can't wait to try this. These are the bagel bombs. Look at that. It's literally bagel dough. Let's get this cross section. What is going on here? Wow. The inside, it's like a pizza pocket, but with bagel dough. All right, I'm into it. It is like lava hot. Oh man. Wow, 10 out of 10. We now got our coffee taste test. So look at these cups. Solid Americano. And one thing worth mentioning as we're doing this tour is that Wortley Village was actually named one of Canada's best neighborhoods in 2013, because this whole area is absolutely stunning, and anybody who lives here, I'm extremely jealous of. You got a beautiful neighborhood. And so that means it's time for our rating. Was it underrated? Not really, because there's tons of information out there about Wortley Village. Experience and value-wise, it's incredible. I think there's tons to see, plus nothing really seems overpriced, making it an obvious, fun experience and a must visit if you're going to London. So the next stop on our list is, of course, Covent Garden Market, named after the one in London, England. No surprise there, we're sticking to the theme. This market was actually founded in 1835 and has gone through 4 iterations to the one you see today, which was built in 1999. But the grounds here have been hosting markets for 170 years, meaning that London's market is in fact older than the city of London itself. So one thing that makes this market actually really cool is that it's an open air market, meaning that we can actually get above it and you can see the entire market stalls from above. I'm actually really impressed with the size and scale of this market. Now, I will say, it's amazing to me how empty the market is on a Sunday morning. With their farmers markets being on Saturday, I'm assuming that's the busiest day. This is a beautiful market, But if this was the St. Lawrence market in Toronto, it would be jammed right now. And there is more than enough room to walk around and a lot of vendors that are just willing to see people. So honestly, if you haven't visited here yet, you gotta come because there's something here for everybody. And I'm just blown away at how few people there are here. And it's only 11 o'clock on a Sunday. Go figure. All right, now, even though we came here after some food, we can't leave here empty-handed. There's a lot of butchers here, so we're gonna go find something for a snack later today, I think. Could I get 4 not spicy pepperettes? Thank you. Bringing us to the ranking, I would say this is an underrated location given how empty it was on a non-busy day, and the experience value-wise is a no-brainer. It's also free for going to a cool place and finding cool items. It's great. And then we obviously had fun. So overall, I would rank this experience a 7 out of 10 and is probably best to visit on a market day. So on our way to our next destination, we drove north of downtown London where the streets get quieter and history becomes really evident. This is the neighborhood of Old North, home to over 180 heritage designated properties, more than almost anywhere else in the city. The neighborhood was dreamed up in the 1840s by Bishop Isaac Helmuth, a Polish-born clergyman who wanted to build London's answer to Oxford and Cambridge. He's who founded Western just up the road, and a lot of the original Queen Anne mansions along Helmuth Avenue still stand almost untouched a century later here. There are tons of homes here with a wild amount of history, making this area a great destination to drive through if you're looking for somewhere scenic. Taking us to our next destination, which might be a little bit of a surprise, Friedrich Banting's house, who was the inventor of the insulin. All right, so now we're here with Grant, the curator of the Banting House National Historic Site. Would you mind telling us a little bit about Banting House, some of the work that you do?
Banting House is known as the birthplace of insulin since 1923. It was here in this house on October 31st, 1920, after a night of restless sleep, wakes up, puts 25 words to his notebook. Those 25 words would give us insulin 10 months later, only 12 weeks of experiments.
What did those 25 words say? Because I think a lot of people heard the story, but not the actual.
His 25 words: diabetes, ligate pancreatic ducts of dog, keep dogs alive till acini degenerate, leaving islets, try to isolate the internal secretion of these, and relieve glycosuria.
Oh my goodness.
One of the great ironies, to discover insulin, can't even spell diabetes correctly.
Wow.
But his penmanship is fantastic, so we can all eat it.
Right. That's so funny.
What we try to do with the house is try to keep as much of the original as we can. When Dr. Banting lived here, he actually only occupied 3 rooms in the house. A bedroom upstairs and 2 rooms here on the main floor. The bedroom were restored right back to the original wallpaper. His office and dispensary, we tried to recreate as best we could. When he left town, he gave away most of his things. So we do have a few pieces of original furniture from here.
Cool.
It gives us the flexibility to tell his life story and how he came to be.
You know, London was called the birthplace of insulin shortly after Banting became Canada's first Nobel Prize winner. He comes to London, he gives London and Western partial credit during a speech, and the local newspaper, and then followed up by some American papers, they called it the birthplace of insulin. Insulin was, as it were, born in London. Toronto is where insulin grew up and was educated. Preserve the birthplace of insulin. There is no Toronto story without the London and Western connection.
We become a pilgrimage site for people now that we're here. 98 was a great year. It marked the 75th anniversary of Banting winning Canada's first Nobel Prize. And so to commemorate the event, we convinced the Royal Canadian Mint and the government, you should put it on your $100 coin.
Why would someone want to come visit today knowing the historic significance? What do we have here and what can somebody expect?
Well, for the diabetes community, it's been 105 years since the discovery of insulin. We have better insulin. What we don't have is anything better than insulin. And so people today come here to pay homage to Dr. Banting, to see the Flam folk behind us and get their picture taken with.
My next question.
Lit by the Queen Mother in 1989. It burns as a symbol in the global community effort to find a cure for diabetes, of which Diabetes Canada is considered one of the leading areas there. One of the beauties that we get to do is share his life biography here. So Banting was a decorated war hero in the First World War, died tragically on a secret mission in the Second World War. His great love of art and painting really began in earnest here. One patient in 28 days gave him a lot of free time.
Wow.
Started a hobby.
Yeah.
And that develops into a friendship with A.Y. Jackson, Group of 7, and produces about 200 works. And so you get to see that. So it's a little bit of everything. But for the global diabetes community, this is a place of hope and a place of paying respect to a man whose discovery affects him all these years later. So the only things that are Banting's, the stool's his, the cupboard's his. You'll see his desk upstairs. That's a successful doctor's desk. Here's the functional one. Here's a 3D pancreas for you. So it's an old stereoscope. So normally with stereoscope, you're thinking castles of Europe, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same picture side by side. And so it's attached to the spleen and the intestine.
So what could somebody expect throughout the year? Do you have ongoing programs that you run here or events that you help facilitate?
We are open Tuesday through Saturday for guided tours. We launched a Lego scavenger hunt this year, which has been a lot of fun. Who knew that adults like Lego as much as they do now too?
I heard that's the main demo now. Yeah.
It is. So people are looking for it. We have doors open. We participate every fall.
Nice.
Our big event is November 14th. So World Diabetes Day, which happens to fall on Banting's birthday. And so here at Diabetes Canada, we go big. We have tents in the square. We have some speakers. The big thing that we do that day is unveil our commemorative stones. So people from around the world are telling their story. So this is our most important room and our most important artifact. It's Dr. Banting's bed. It was here the world changed, October 31, 1920, when he wakes up. Yeah, because he realized it's after midnight. So he put the one through. Yeah. And it's really interesting to see people walking through the square backwards, reading everything. And it's a real connection. So we have bricks for researchers. We have individuals celebrating their anniversary. So people living with diabetes, they celebrate their birthday, but they also celebrate the day they were diagnosed. And so they'll commemorate that with a stone.
Well, if anybody wants to support further,
We're on all the socials. Look us up at Banting House, Facebook, Instagram, X, Diabetes Canada website. I was really proud and happy to share it with everybody.
love it. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Bringing us to yet another ranking, was Banting House underrated? I 100% think so. If you're visiting London, this has to be added high on your bucket list. Given how important insulin is, the stories here are amazing to learn about. It is so worth your value. It's like $7 to enter, so it's a no-brainer, especially because we are supporting such a great cause. And did we have fun? Obviously, Grant was an incredible tour guide and everybody there seems like incredible people. 9 out of 10. It's an absolute must visit. So we made it to market number 2 today now. You guys gave me recommendations for the main downtown market and this one behind me, which is the Western Fair District Market in the Confederation Building. This building was actually built in 1927 when Canada turned 50, and it's supposed to be a much more local friendly market that really leans into the producer to consumer model. So it's filled with local Ontario farmers that are all growing Ontario products. It's supposed to be the most local of the locals, and upstairs is a maker market. So it's a very different vibe than what we've seen in the last market, and already is packed in the parking lot. So I'm curious about what I was actually going to find here. And this is a market you want to come to, especially early and on a weekend even earlier, because the local producers sold out fast. So first impressions, it's a lot darker. It's not as like manufactured as the main downtown market, and it looks a lot more farmer friendly. So we made it upstairs. Been to the One of a Kind show in Toronto. Impressions here, it's very one of a kind. Hilariously, my friend who owns Villager Puzzles actually has her puzzles at the market. Shout out Villager Puzzles. These are really cool. Good find. Overall, I'd say I might have a bad assessment about what this market is because everything was sold out. The maker market upstairs is an absolute must visit. It is so cool, especially because we are supporting local. But for the downstairs, I would say it has a very good vibe as well. But with everything sold out, it's kind of hard to tell. All right, and we got the fritters. Had to. If you're at a market in Ontario, fritters are standard. Go to Waterloo, St. Jacobs Farmers Market. They've got the apple fritters, but we opted for a blueberry and a strawberry rhubarb. So we're gonna see what these are like. Taste test. We're going for a blueberry fritter. It's literally blueberry pie filling. But you know what? It's definitely like a 7.5 out of 10, but it's surprisingly good. Maybe I'm just hungry. Bringing us to the destination I was probably most excited about, 100 Kellogg and the brewery Powerhouse Brewing. All right, so now we're here with Landon, the head brewer at Powerhouse Brewing. Would you mind telling me how you got started in beer and sort of the inspiration for what you're brewing today?
I got started in brewing during COVID, so kind of a switch of paths for me. So I went to Niagara College, the brewing school down there, ended up getting a job right out of there, and I've been at Powerhouse ever since.
Right out of school, you basically got.
Yeah, right out of school. Right now, we're standing beside our brew house. It is a 25 hectoliter DME 4-vessel brew house. So we have a vessel for every single kind of large step that you have. The vibe for the beers here though is like, we try to keep everything super like approachable.
Going 9 to 5. Nice. It's
Just
good.
Something really clean.
Yeah, like I could see that on a golf course. I love coming up on these. Do you know what this room was before?
This whole building was the power generation facility for Kellogg's.
No way.
So hence the name.
hence the name.
Hence the name Powerhouse. So we had to keep certain aspects of it. Not everybody's a huge fan of like super dry hop bitter IPAs.
Yeah.
So we have like our biggest seller is like a Bud Light type beer, a light lager. I would describe it as like a dad beer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Like it's not quite a Keats. Like a Keats is a dad beer in like my mind, you know? That's very good.
The grains go in over here. This is the mash tun. Once the beer is done mashing, that gets transferred over to our lauter tun, and we transfer it over to our kettle, which is right behind you. And then once all of that's been done, so that's also typically an hour-long process, we transfer that into the whirlpool. And then once it's been through the whirlpool, we actually send it through. So there's a wort transfer line right behind you, and then into a fermenter.
Cool.
And then it's in there. You had the yeast, and then in a couple days, you usually have beer.
You should have.
You should have beer.
What are you most proud to brew that you guys have here?
The coffee blonde. I talk it up because it's one of the beers that like people consistently ask us for. This one is a beer version of a coffee crisp. This is brewed with honey malt, but when we're doing the brew, we add coffee grinds and cacao nibs in.
All right, so Brandon's been talking up the coffee. Oh, you can smell it. That's fun. Dude. Wow. It is that coffee crisp like note to it, but it's not like the bitterness of the coffee. It's just like the smooth coffee flavor in a beer. That's crazy. He was hyping it up. He was right to hype it up. He's like, and what's the theme that Powerhouse is trying to create with its beers?
We have our core brand stuff, a light lager, a cream ale, a pilsner, and an IPA. All of them, other than the light lager, which is called 9 to 5. That was the beer that we had for all of the guys who were working on the site, and they would come in after, they'd have a beer on the owner. The other ones are named after electrical terms. So we got the low voltage cream ale, we got the generator, and then we got the static pilsner.
Cool.
The space that we have here is we got 5 50 hectoliter fermenters and 2 50 hectoliter bright tanks. So this tank actually has beer in it, but this is a racking arm. It's a hooked rod, and so when you stick it in, it sits above the shrub pile.
Gotcha.
And what you can do is you can actually spin it, and you can collect from higher or lower depending on how much shrub is in the beer. Once the fermentation is done and we've got it cold crashed, we transfer it into these conditioning tanks. These are called bright beer tanks. And once they're in here, this is where we do the cold conditioning. We'll have a line hooked up to, there's the kegging machine right over here.
Cool.
And then we have our canning line over there.
Well, we can't wait to try some.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys to try.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Again, that's another one of our big sellers. Our biggest like sellers are the first 3 there.
Okay.
And then my personal favorite is the last one.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Here we go. It's static. Like it's crazy.
That's fine.
Yeah. That's very good. And so to rank Powerhouse Brewing, I think that's also pretty hard. This is somewhere that's actually really cool, and I think they're doing a lot of unique things in 100 Kellogg itself. So while unfortunately we weren't actually able to take part in all 100 Kellogg had to offer, I think with how cool Powerhouse Brewing actually is, not only do you need to visit this brewery and have a sample of their beer, but you need to visit 100 Kellogg with everything that they're doing in this restored factory that Kellogg's used to use to manufacture their products. It's a great example of how a previous industrial space can be revitalized to now house a bunch of modern day businesses and become a community epicenter. So this is somewhere that I hope to come back to, either making a video all about this in the future or incorporating it into a summer version of this London video. All right, and hopefully this gives you a better idea about what you can do in London, Ontario. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and I can guarantee you there will be a part 2 in the summer. Obviously, we just scratched the surface. So with that, I hope to see you all on the next one, and thanks for watching.